I always like to be topical in my subjects of poetry, and this is about Joan of Arc. I didn't realise until fairly recently that a transcript, a word-for-word transcript of her trial, which took place in, correct me if I'm wrong, the 14th century, I think. And what's really interesting about Joan of Arc's trial is what, a sharp individual she was. And remember, she was still a teenager. She was 17 when she went to war. She's one of the most extraordinary figures in history. So, light your fires for Joan of Arc. Impatient with her jurors, Joan snapped, "Light your fires." So they did. Burn this roaring girl, not yet 20. Illiterate, she was fitted up. The court translated her Middle French into Latin, not a tongue she understood. Bored by repeated questions, she languidly replied, "Ask me next Saturday." Pressed about the voices, what form they took. If their names entered through doors were warm or smelled, she said, "The light comes in the name of the voice." And what language did the voices speak? Better language than yours. She was judged a heretic, scorched in the square. Light your fires, she scorned, ascending into sainthood. Once she convinced the Dauphin she was sent by God to quell the English. In body armour and shorn hair, just 17, she faced them off at Orleans. A court would later confuse, amuse and kill her, but that day her voice could not be clearer. "The King of Heaven commands you, through me, to abandon your strongholds, go back to your country. If not, I'll make a war cry, remembered forever." France's anointed heroine won the day. Her only sin? She embarrassed men. She wrote the script. She made the play. This next poem is called Refugee, and I wanted to dedicate it tonight to Jo Cox because just in her life as an MP and also in her previous life as a director of Oxfam, she did a great deal of work on behalf of refugees, particularly Syrian refugees. Refugee. Refugee is living in fear every second of every day. Refugee is seeing your children killed, terrified for the ones that live. Refugee is realizing that escape is a place with no name. Refugee is fleeing with just a suitcase and your loved ones. Refugee is losing all you own, your home, its memories. Refugee is giving your money to a gangster. Refugee is letting that gangster risk your life in a leaky boat. Refugee is the jubilation of survival as you scrabble onto dry land. Refugee is the kindness of islanders offering shelter and warmth. Refugee is continuing your journey on a pitiless road. Refugee is bullet-faced men guarding razor wire fences. Refugee is watching a continent pull up its drawbridge. Refugee is freezing camps in winter, all dignity stripped away. Refugee is wicked politicians peddling a currency of hate. Refugee is the miracle of completing the obstacle course. Refugee is being lifted by strong hands, words soothing as balm. Welcome friend, welcome home, come share our land. Thank you. I come from an Irish family, so we spent quite a bit of time in Ireland as children. So this is a couple of poems about being Irish and my family. And the first one is called Picking Mushrooms in Tubbercurry, which is not somewhere on the Indian subcontinent, but is actually in Sligo, where my father's side of the family came from. So this is breakfast Irish style. Rain sparkling in hedgerows, we fetched a bucket to the field, began picking dew-fresh gold, luscious fungi, free as the western air, teasing my grandmother's house. The Atlantic girl, she tossing her white caps as we returned, ripe with treasure. stoked the fire with peat, placed a brimming pan on the hob, mushrooms wallowing in a scoop of dripping. Breakfast was served with soda bread, butter melting into pale streams. My uncle ate from the frying pan, smoked for a while, then took his keen-edged spade down to the turf. A life lived without telephone or television, radio or papers, only gossip for news, content in its natural rhythms, ceilidh, church-going, hymns. My father was an electrician, and this is a poem about something my mother and father liked to do together. So it's called Time and the Man. My mother bought broken clocks at jumble sales. My father mended them, spent hours fiddling with the mechanisms, uncoiling the stuck springs. With his sharp electrician's eye and nimble fingers used to separating wires, he pried apart the innards until discovering the secret hurt at the heart of time. Hours later at tea time, we tiptoed in, found him trance-like, hand cupped to the mechanism, released from its cage of inactivity, tick-tocking rhythmically, majestically, setting time going as shadows crossed the room, and we longed for our Saturday sausages and the coming of the moon. I was reading the Financial Times recently. You have to keep up with what the enemy's thinking. And I came across a column by Lisa Pollock who said that on their deathbed, no one says they wish they'd gone to more meetings. So this is regrets. On his deathbed, he wished he'd gone to more meetings, had more delayed train journeys, waited longer in supermarket queues, encountered more options when phoning the gas board, contributed more to work collections, stayed longer at birthday and Christmas dues, been more fulsome in praise of idiot managers, worked on long after retirement age, forfeiting a globe-trotting pension gap year, an affair with a woman half his age. How much better if there were more dental appointments, more bouts of flu, more spam mail, more sweaty tube journeys, more early morning alarms, hurry, get dressed, there's no time to blink moments. How much better if he wasn't on his deathbed, heading for God knows where, and he awoke in time to hear someone say, "That covers everything. Do you have any questions?" Well, Britain has had to make, had to make a very big decision, and I think you've probably been following this closely. I know how I have. I'm talking, of course, about Springwatch, which people voted in their thousands on which was the best fish, and I'm delighted they chose to vote number one, the brown trout. So this is my trout poem, and it gives viewers some information about how to keep your own trout in the bath. This is my first trout poem, not perhaps a long one. This is because my knowledge of trout is severely limited. I sometimes eat rainbow trout, but I'm not familiar with their natural habitat. This is because I live by a railway siding many miles from fresh water. Still, trout have been familiar with my small kitchen. Their gutted spines and pop-eyed heads have added resonance to my dustbin. I place trout alongside croquet potatoes, red cabbage, sweet corn. I pity trout in a pan, wonder to what purpose were they born. This is my first trout poem. I'm hoping to keep one as a pet. It can live in the bath, and once a month I'll take it to the vet. Oh, I wish I were a trout, leaping in the river, not a frozen trout in Sainsbury's, competing for attention with sausages and liver. That's it. Thank you. Okay, I'd like to invite back onto the Dodo stage, continue the evening.